that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. I am George Harvey.
And I am Tom Fennell.
And welcome back, Tom, again. We welcomed Tom back last time, but I wanted to welcome him back again because life is so much better when Tom's around. Anyway, what we're doing here is just going through the week's news, starting with last Thursday, which what day was this? Last Friday. I think that was the 14th. Okay. Today being the 20th of November. And this is stuff that I found online during the week doing my blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com. You can visit that blog and go into these things in more detail by reading the entries for them. So we'll just start with November 14th. And here is an item that came from Clean Technica. A cool summer and increased levels of hydro generation has resulted in a significant reduction in coal generation in China over recent months, with coal consumption in August down by 11%. A large impact has been on coal imports, which have fallen by half, a heavy impact on Australia.
Well, you can see by the graphs, the dark blue is 2014.
Yeah.
And the net coal imports, as George just said, have fallen by half.
Yeah.
By more than half.
This is, this is having a big impact on a country that is banking on coal. We'll see how that works out.
And it also mentions, I don't think this graph is on there, but it's Australian coal exporters, which are falling in conjunction with Chinese imports.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens. And of course, during the recent time, China has been, basically it's declared a war on coal. People talk about Obama's war on coal. He never said he was doing a war on coal, but the head
has.
Yeah, right. The head of China declared that they are doing a war on coal, and they're taxing coal imports. They're cutting their coal imports to nothing as soon as they can. The Indians are doing basically the same thing, and for slightly different reasons. And we'll see how that all goes.
Well, the ironic part of it is there probably is a clean way to consume coal by gasifying it. That type of stuff.
They've gasified coal for a long time.
It's been done, but this is not how they're generating power.
And
they're just burning coal.
Yeah, and
coal is dirty.
Coal is dirty, and even with coal gasification, it's expensive to get the bad stuff out of there, which a lot of that is sulfur. And the sulfur burns, and it makes sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide, which makes sulfurous acid and sulfuric acid.
Burns the paint off your car.
Burns the paint off the car, and you get mercury into the air, and all of this stuff is hard to remove. It's a lot of bad stuff.
It could all be cleaned up, but for a price. And as of now, the price isn't worth it.
The price is too high. It's higher than the prices of wind and solar. It's higher than the price of solar. Okay, next item. In resilience, a landmark lawsuit that challenged the lax regulation of hydraulic fracking in Canada has just scored a major victory.
This is an interesting one.
It is. An Alberta Chief Justice dismissed all key arguments made by the government of Alberta against the lawsuit, including the fear of a flood of lawsuits against a government dependent on hydrocarbon revenue.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting a lot of revenue.
They're getting a lot of revenue, and they're afraid of.
Been for a long time.
But if you think about the idea of those people can't sue me, what has happened here is the justice said we're going to go ahead with the suit. We're going to hear the suit.
That's not decided yet.
Yeah.
But at least we're going to look at it.
That's right. And the argument of Alberta, I think, is really kind of vile. what they're saying is, no, we're doing too much of this for anybody to object.
Yeah.
Really, it's bad. So anyway.
Well, one of the problems here is they called this lady a terrorist.
Yes. Well, I mean, she's
That's
a
a good
terrorist because she sued them.
Yeah.
And literally, that is why they called her a terrorist. They're not pulling any stops on this one. They want to put that lady under. They want to prevent her from saying what she's got to say in court. And that was why this was a major victory.
Well, that's what's going on. That's exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
These kinds of tactics and obstacles are used by government and corporations to grind down ordinary people into nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
And Jessica Ernst, the lady in this suit, has not only survived but sailed through it. It's invigorating. It's a very large victory in many ways.
Yeah, it is indeed.
I don't know who said that. I didn't notice.
A lot of people don't think about this. It is something that people in business talk about. People in businesses, big businesses, talk about. When you bring a suit to them, you've got to continue that suit until somebody has finally won. No appeals. They've actually won.
Yep.
And every dime they make you spend is another dime you don't have.
Yep.
And that means that if you're a big business and you have billions of dollars and somebody sues you, all you've got to do is bleed them dry.
Just bleed
the
them dry.
moment they can't pay their lawyers, you've won your suit.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you're right or wrong.
That's right. And it means that big corporations feel that they have got a right to trounce people's. And I'm not making this up. I mean, this is something that was told to me by somebody who is in a big corporation. We don't have the right to do this, but this is what we do. We trounce on people's rights.
Yeah.
They've got to protect themselves. And if they can't protect themselves, then who cares?
Yep.
Nobody cares if they can't protect themselves.
Bottom line.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, this is something that happens in the society that we're in. Next item, are we ready to go on?
We're ready to go.
Okay, Jinnah Nuclear Power Plant is losing money to the tune of $100 million over the last 3 years. A decade-long power purchase agreement between Jinnah's owners, Exelon and Constellation Energy, and RG&E,
Rochester Gas and Electric.
I knew he'd know who that was, expired last month. The future of the plant seems uncertain. Now, what do you have on that, Tom? That from WROC-TV, by the way.
Know. Oh, I was trying to figure out that acronym. That's a television station. I should have thought of that.
Yeah.
Well, basically, it comes down to the plant is too expensive to operate under the present rate structure.
Right.
So the owners of the plant want the users of electricity to pay more.
Right.
And it's up to the people to decide, apparently, in this particular
It's going
case.
to the Public Service Board has told RG&E that they have to negotiate. Mm-hmm. So this is not over.
So now this is a quote from somebody that's involved here, but one thing that the consumers want more than anything else is reliability.
Yes.
Well, at what cost?
Yes.
You know, so they have to make that decision.
That's right.
And it is a valid decision for them to make, because
Yes.
if they're not buying this nuclear, they're going to have to buy something from somebody else. How much is that going to cost? How reliable is it going to be?
Right.
They got to figure all this out.
Right.
I got no problem with that.
I don't either. The one thing that you have to kind of bear in mind, though, is that nuclear power is expensive.
Well,
And-
it is that, and it's becoming more and more expensive every day.
And the issue of reliability includes something about that expense, and the fact that it has to shut off every 18 months for refueling.
And even when it's not shutting off, it's got to pay for the eventuality that something might shut it off.
Oh, no. They don't have to pay for that. Just look at what Entergy did at Vermont Yankee. They never put a dime into retiring that plant.
Well, no, I was just talking about maintenance of
Yes,
of power.
okay, yeah.
And it is happening as we speak to various nuclear plants in America,
Yeah,
and I guess around the world.
yes,
They're stopping to work for one reason or another.
yes.
And
They're getting
sometimes
old.
the reasons are very trivial, but they're reasons.
Yeah, like Crystal River, where they broke open a wall because they needed to change out a steam generator. And then all of a sudden, the rest of the wall cracked. And fixing that was going to cost $1.5 billion. And the plant wasn't worth $1.5 billion, so it shut down. Same thing at San Onofre. They replaced 2 steam generators with slightly modified versions that just didn't last.
Failed. Yeah.
They both failed.
Yeah.
So, these are the kinds of problems that you have. I will, there's something that I should point out here. Every day I go to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and a website,
the website.
Right, to their website, and I look at news that they've got. And I don't bring that up here. The stuff that's here is news that's in the news. But the stuff at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission website is really interesting because it shows you something. Every time anything goes wrong, it has to be reported to the NRC by the power plant.
Yeah.
Now, I don't remember whether it was today or yesterday, but one of the things that went wrong was 2 doors happened to be open at the same time when they weren't supposed to be open at the same time.
Okay.
This is a matter of a door being open for 10 seconds. They've got to report that to the NRC.
I'm sure there's a reason, but that sounds a little bit...
It is. No, well, in this case, they've got an inner containment and an outer containment.
So it's an airlock.
It's an airlock, and the doors are not supposed to be open on the same time.
Yeah,
At the same time, they want to make sure that thing is isolated.
10 seconds might be a little bit short, but how do you know it's 10 seconds?
Yeah. They had every time I turn around, it seems, Another one was somebody discovered that, they have conditions that are called unanalyzed conditions. And what that means is that in the course of building the nuclear power plant and designing all the safeguards and so forth, there's something that somebody forgot about. Well, of course there's something that somebody forgot about. There's always going to be things that people forgot about. But in the course of looking at this, which they're doing constantly, they found one.
Okay.
And what does that tell you? It tells me that these nuclear power plants have got people working for them who are just looking for problems. That's what they do. So we've got to hand that to them. We've got to say yes, they're doing it. I don't like nuclear power. I don't like the way that the critical mass design I think is a really bad design, but that's a separate issue. These guys are trying under the rules that they've been given to do the best they can, and I've got to grant them that.
I'll give them that.
Yep. Okay. Saturday, November 15th. This comes from The Guardian. You ready for The Guardian?
I had trouble getting that. Matter of fact, this was one of the sites I could not reach until the evening.
Oh, wow.
And this is a particularly good site.
Yeah, well, this is a particularly good article.
Yeah.
The first article in a new series in The Guardian about individuals helping to make cities more reliant. And what is it? There are many lessons to be learned from Alex Wilson's farm in Vermont.
Bingo.
There's Alex Wilson. Building durable, well-insulated buildings with simple, redundant systems out of easy-to-fix, local, renewable materials in a strong, caring community makes sense just about anywhere. Yes, thank you very much.
This is coming from England.
Well, actually, there is an American Guardian office. And I think the American Guardian office probably was responsible for this.
Well, it's a print newspaper, isn't it?
It's a print newspaper in the UK and Australia.
In Australia too.
But they have an online version that's American.
So we don't know whether I saw this article. Or
if they had access to the Guardian, they had access to this article. People in Shanghai had access to this article. And what Alex Wilson is talking about is the Resilient Design Institute, which is, guess what, gang, here in Brattleboro.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Alex, because it says right here, for more than 30 years, Alex Wilson has been the most trusted voice on energy efficiency and environmentally responsible design and construction.
Yeah, and you and I know him.
Yeah. Actually, I tried to get him on the show one time, and I called him, and he never got back to me.
Well, we got to get him on the show. I sat down and had a beer with him a week ago.
Yeah.
And we were over at I guess it was McNeil's.
Well,
and
there's
talking exactly about this.
There's his barn with the solar panels on it.
Yes.
Now, Alex and his wife bought this farm in Dummerston a couple of years ago
Yeah.
with the exact idea of turning it into a show place.
Yep.
And that's what they're doing. For those who don't know, he runs a blog, I guess you call it, or it's really a website or
It's a website.
online
It was a
newspaper,
print journal.
online publication
Yeah.
called Building Green.
Yes, that's right.
Highly regarded website.
Yes.
It's oriented toward the professional.
It requires a subscription really to get into it.
Well, that much I can believe, but I mean, it's not for the do-it-yourself.
It's not for the do-it-yourself.
Contractors.
Although there's a lot of information there that is good for do-it-yourselfers, but what Alex is doing with this thing in Dummerston, he is stuff that will apply to do-it-yourselfers, and it will benefit do-it-yourselfers.
He calls it a passively resilient home.
How about that?
And he is a founder of the Resilient Design Institute.
Yes.
To broaden the reach of the sustainable building movement.
Yes.
And I guess this is a quote from Alex. I want even climate change deniers to boost the energy performance of their homes. Doing so will keep their families safer during power outages and other disturbances.
Yes.
And it will benefit all of us.
Yes.
The motivation of safety for many people will be a stronger motivation than, quote, doing the right thing or trying to mitigate climate change. But the benefit in reducing carbon emissions will be the same.
Right.
So what he's saying is even if you don't believe in climate change, it still makes sense to save energy.
It makes sense to save energy. And you know, when you think about it, we're going to come up to a thing about China. I'll mention it then. But the Chinese are putting in renewable power very, very rapidly. Mm-hmm. They're going to wind up, if they keep doing it and we keep not doing it, and we are doing it, but if we stop doing it and they keep doing it, we're going to wind up in a position where they've got free power and we don't. Yeah. And how is that going to make it possible for us to compete with them?
I think
we're going to be in trouble.
I think it isn't.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot more about Alex here, and we could talk about it all afternoon. I think we could get him up here and talk.
We do. There's no question. But anybody who wants to can go to The Guardian. You can go to my website, geoharvey.wordpress.com, and this is on November 15th news, and you can go and find it and look it up. It's a good article.
It's a good article. It's really worth reading. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yep. Okay. Next, and we're not going to go into this one, I don't think, in detail yet, because it's come up twice for this publication. Republicans in the U.S.
more on this below. Yeah.
Right. U.S. approved legislation 252 to 161 for the 9th time. This is the House of Representatives to construct the Keystone XL oil pipeline. The Senate is expected to vote Tuesday, which they did.
They voted it down.
Yep, on the bill. If it overcomes a 60-vote threshold, it will head to President Barack Obama's desk, where he will either sign it into law or veto it. Now, the 60-vote threshold is because, my recollection is, you needed 60 votes because it was an international deal.
I think it has something to do with filibustering. You need 60 votes to break a filibuster.
I think it's because...
You used to have to stand there and talk, but you don't anymore.
Yeah.
I want a filibuster. Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Sanders
Tom and I have different ideas about
this.
why 60, but one of us is maybe we're both wrong.
Sanders had a good comment on this.
What's that?
Building a tar sands pipeline would be insane.
Yes. All right, going on, because we're going to hit this again. Utility Dive, what a name, gave us this one, the much-aligned Department of Energy loan guarantee program that's funded solar manufacturer Solyndra. You remember Solyndra?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They were the ones who cost the U.S. taxpayers $500 million. And electric vehicle maker Fisker Automotive is now making money for the U.S. taxpayers.
Oh, yeah.
Further losses are not expected, and interest on the loans will ultimately set up $6 billion for the taxpayers.
Now, how much did we cost Solyndra? How much?
$500 million.
$500 million.
We're going to be making money.
So we're $6 billion versus $500 million.
Yeah. Solyndra is a great example that the anti-renewable people bring up all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And if you think about it in this context, it's like saying, that bank is terrible. They actually had to foreclose on a mortgage. Would you do that? No. So, so the arguments about that include Solyndra really don't impress me in the slightest.
I'm thinking of the right word for it, and I can't, but it's a kind of a red herring.
It is. It is a red herring. Okay, moving on, unless you've got more on that.
There's a lot on it, but let's move on.
Okay. Clean Technica gave us this on Sunday, November 16th. Solid-state batteries capable of delivering on a 400-plus mile range per single charge are a real possibility and possess great potential, according to Volkswagen's chairman of the board, Dr. Martin Winterkorn. Such a battery do you suppose his name is Winterkorn and he's just kind of fudging this because he wants to pretend to be German? If such a battery can be economical.
So what's a Winterkorn already?
It means winter corn.
It probably does. Yeah.
It does. That's exactly what it means. Not corn like maize.
Corn is any kind of
cereal grain, yeah. If such a battery can be economically manufactured, then that would be more or less turn the industry upside down. That from Clean Technica. And by golly, solid-state batteries?
Well, I have a hard time wrapping it up. I mean, I can understand it from a technical standpoint, but visualizing a battery without something sloshing around in it, that's tough for me.
Yeah.
But it is, in fact, a solid-state battery in which the electrons move through things like clay or mud, not even mud, clay or
powder, yeah,
something like that, and it works.
And it works.
Now, they haven't gotten to the point that they're shooting for a 400-mile range for a car.
But he's saying that it may be possible. This is something that might come up.
And these solid-state batteries won't catch fire or anything like that.
Well, I've read about flow batteries being used in vehicles too. And right now they're huge.
Well, they can be huge,
but
they don't have to be.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
So the point of it is, there's people working on energy storage solutions that 20 years ago didn't even know what energy storage was.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to hit the nail on the head. And there's going to be a lot of
some of them. That's an interesting point, because it's not going to be just one.
Oh no,
it's going to be a bunch of them.
There's going to be different approaches.
Yeah, which may have different applications. Okay, Mashable gave us this one. Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott may have thought he left global climate change off the agenda for the G20 summit in Brisbane, but U.S. President Obama and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon put it on the spotlight through a series of actions in the past few days. That's past few days before the G20 summit started. Obama ensured climate change was front and center before he even got to Australia, before his plane landed.
By the way, that's Abbott up there shaking hands with
Obama.
It's not Ban Ki-moon.
Yeah, right.
In case you wonder why he doesn't look Chinese.
Yes, well.
Because he's not.
I don't think Ban Ki-moon is Chinese. I think he's, I don't know where he comes from.
I don't know.
Korea? Thailand? I don't know.
No, I think he's not Chinese. I think he's from Korea. I think.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Moon is a Chinese, Korean name.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have more on this one?
I will digress slightly. I was at a meeting one time in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
That was being held by an English guy whose name was Lee.
Okay.
And the people at the meeting were all Koreans. And it was funny because he says, I want you to meet Mr. Lee, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Kim. And my name is Lee. I may be wrong with the number of Lees, but they were all Lees except for one whose name was Kim.
That's amazing, because almost all of them are named Kim. No, it's not true. There are lots of people who are Korean and are not named Kim. But there's a lot of Kims. It's kind of like Smith in the United States or England.
Yep.
Okay, next. Clean Technica brought us this. The Oak Ridge National Laboratories microgrid project the, quote, complete system-level, efficient, and interoperable solution for microgrid integrated controls.
That's called C-seismic, in case you wanted to know.
C-seismic, end quote.
These acronyms are getting...
Right.
I have to look them up.
Yeah. Claims to standardize the toolkit for managing and controlling an effective, safe, and reliable microgrid. It is now 2 years in, and the fruits of the labor are starting to show. This is from Oak Ridge.
What this means now is they're getting the computer software and hardware set up so that all of this stuff of balancing loads is happening automatically.
Yeah, and the speed at which it can happen is really astonishing.
It's very small.
Yeah.
Microseconds.
Yeah, microseconds. And, you know, I mean, in the past, when we had to rely on peaking plants, these plants would come on and, you know, they were saying, this plant is really great.
It ramps up in 20 minutes?
It ramps up in 20 minutes, you know. And now what we're talking about, and we will get into another one of these later on, now what we're talking about is batteries, literally batteries,
yep,
in competition with natural gas peaking plants,
yep,
financially,
yep,
and they can switch in microseconds.
Yep.
So
the juice is there already.
Yeah.
Bingo, it's just like turning on a low switch.
That's right. And it can go from charging to discharging in less than a second. So this is as we've said many times, we're getting into a new world. Okay, we're up to Monday, the 17th of November. In Australia, the Victorian Labour Party is underlining its renewable energy credentials by vowing to help the town of Newstead near
Melbourne.
Yeah, right. Near Bendigo to be what's Bendigo? I don't know. To become 100%. Why are they saying near Bendigo? I would think that that would be.
I did look it up. It's northwest of Melbourne.
Oh, okay. I would. If you said Bendigo, I would have said, "Is that in the Baja?"
I'm sure these guys know where it is.
I'm sure they do. To become 100% renewable energy by 2017, making it the state's first solar town. The effort will focus primarily on solar power and battery storage. We're back to batteries here for reliable 100% renewable power. Wow.
There's another town there too that's going.
There's a whole
entirely renewable by 2022. It's called Yakandanda.
Yakandanda. Okay. Okay. That was from Renew Economy.
On this one, which I illuminated here, it's the Newstead initiative is led by Renewable Newstead, which wants it to become a town where people talk and think about energy, and where understanding of our usage and our energy options become widespread in the community.
Well, you know, this takes us back to Wildpolsried.
Yeah.
Where you know, that's a small town. And they went to having about 5 times as much power as they need. Well, all of a sudden they've got, with a population of 2,600, 150 new jobs.
Yeah.
And some of those jobs are because outsiders come into the community to see what they've done, to learn.
Yeah.
And of course, we've seen this.
They got a little institute doing exactly that now.
Right. They're doing it in Gössing in Austria. They're doing it in Samsø in Denmark. They're doing it in a bunch of different places where they've got these institutes that are put together to show how these various places have done this. And in the past, you know, the first place that I knew of that was 100% solar as a political entity was Tokelau, which is
It's an island.
It's an island in the South Pacific, which is partly administered by New Zealand, but they call themselves an independent country. I think they have defense from New Zealand or something. But they were given a grant, and the grant got them so they were 100% solar with battery backup, and then their ultimate backup, if everything else fails, is diesel, which is operated on locally produced oil. I think it is coconut oil.
Yeah, I read about that.
And all of these places that are islands and so forth, it makes sense because we were talking about places where energy is being sold for $1 a kilowatt hour. But here in Samsø, in Tokelau, not Tokelau, in Wildpolsried, in Gössing, The price of energy was the same as it is in the surrounding area. It's just that they have got to the point where they've said, we're going to take a hold of this, we're going to do something about it, we're going to stop hemorrhaging money because of the money that goes out of our economy. And so they've got people going there to find out how they do it.
Yeah.
And how they do it
and that's some of those jobs, and they're good paying jobs.
Yeah, and there's no secret about this. You can just go online and find all about it.
Well, we're talking about this one is in the state of Victoria.
Right.
Which is the southeast. I'm starting to learn a little bit about
Australian geography. So
it's the southeast
of
Australian geography. It's the most densely populated and industrialized part of Australia.
Right.
It's where the capital is.
Yes.
Just above it is also pretty well industrialized called New South Wales.
Right.
And this next article we're going to talk about
occurs
in New South Wales.
Let's do that, since you've mentioned it.
And it happens just by coincidence that it's happening in a section of New South Wales, which they call New England.
Yeah.
And
How about
I never
that?
heard of that before.
Well, I was mistaken because I thought that New England was farther north than the Australians have it. But nevertheless, here it is. And this comes from the Inverell Times. The region Australians call New England may become the first region in the country to be powered 100% from renewable energy sources.
Now, this is a pretty large region. It's about as big as our New England.
Right.
Maybe even a little bit bigger, because New South Wales is a pretty big. Well, everything in Australia is big.
Everything in Australia is big.
Are.
Yeah, you've got a country that's basically about the size of the United States, with about a tenth of the population.
Yeah, something like that.
The Northern Tablelands Greens candidate Mercurius Goldstein,
an assumed name if I ever heard.
says.
What's a big brother named Goldstein?
I don't remember. Yeah. I'll bet this guy is actually Italian. Says
Mercurius.
Mercurius, yeah. Says that
he's a good guy.
Yeah, says this would provide energy security while keeping the region free from coal seam gas mining.
Isn't that like fracking?
Very much, actually, except it sounds worse because what they're doing is they're finding a coal seam underground and they're pumping air down there and lighting it on fire.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, and then they're starving it for oxygen, so it makes carbon monoxide.
Oh, okay.
All right?
Yeah,
and then the carbon monoxide comes up, and carbon monoxide burns.
Will burn, right.
So they're using it as a fuel. But the question that I've got is, what happens if they leak carbon monoxide into the ground, and it comes up in people's basements?
Yeah. Yeah, that could happen.
I mean, do you remember the name of the town in Pennsylvania they had to evacuate because of carbon monoxide?
No, I don't. There was something similar to this happening.
Yeah, there was a coal seam underground, and it was actually lit by accident by the fire department, which was burning something at the town dump, and the coal seam came up to the ground, almost to the ground at that site, and it caught on fire. And the coal seam started burning underground and delivering carbon monoxide into people's homes. And it got to the point where the town had to be evacuated. And I don't remember when that was, but I think it was a little over 50 years ago. And they have still got this ghost town. All the people had to move out.
They had to move, yeah.
And because of an underground fire. And this coal seam gas mining, they're doing it on purpose. It's really, it's sad to think that kind of thing happens. Okay. The next item from Electric Co-op Today says, electric cooperatives are facing a new challenge that centers on how today's members view renewable energy. For the first time, we see cooperative members who want to talk about and want to see renewables and clean power, and they see that as more important than reliability and cost. And that is a major change.
Major change in thinking. Yeah.
It is. This is really kind of fascinating to see this happening.
You got a nice picture of a solar farm.
Yeah.
Now, these co-ops are much bigger than the co-ops in Vermont. I mean, there's one of them here.
Well, the Dairyland Co-op in Wisconsin actually had a nuclear power plant. So that's not trivial. Should we go on?
Yeah, the next two are both about China. So
Tuesday the 18th. The leader of the U.S. Senate says that under China-U.S. climate deal, China can, quote, do nothing at all for 16 years, end quote. That turns out to be the very reverse of the truth.
It's not the leader yet. It's the leader to be.
Leader to be. China is already leading the world in greening its energy supply and has committed to add 1.3 gigawatts of renewable power capacity every week for 15 years.
Every week.
Holy chamoly.
I can't wrap my head around that one.
This is just, it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
That's a good talking point.
A good talking point. If you think about what that means, this is the equivalent of adding 2 Vermont Yankee plants every month. And that accounts for the capacity factors.
Yeah.
This is the, you know, the amount of actual produced power they will get out of this is 2 Vermont Yankee plants every month.
Well,
every month.
Okay.
Every other week.
Every
they would
other
have
week.
to, they'd have to add about.
Because you're talking about a capacity rather than.
Yeah, the capacity factor for renewables is about 1/3 of what it is for nuclear. But you know, I mean, this is a huge amount of work. This is just amazing. And of course, you know,
it's a vast country.
It's a vast country. I was talking to Tori Weekers, my landlady, about this, and she's very into electrical power, renewability, sustainability, and all the rest of that. And she said, where are they going to get the money to do that? That's a huge investment. And she's right.
Where do we get the money to fight all the wars?
Good question. And what would we have if we used that money on something else instead of fighting all those wars?
Well, if we were making things again, it'd be a little bit different world.
Yeah, it would be. Okay, the next one is that one was from The Ecologist. This is from Take Part. You lost your microphone. The U.S. Got it? I think it's dangling onto the floor.
There it is.
Yeah, you've got it. Excitement. You're on the set. The U.S. government has invested $34 billion in renewable energy, and it's making a profit. Is that the next one? That's not about China.
No, this is China. China's National Energy Bureau stated that China's coal consumption would probably peak by 2020. So carbon emissions could peak a little after that, and certainly before 2030.
Oh, that's actually kind of part of that same thing, isn't it?
Is it? It might be. It probably
don't think
is.
I've got
I
that
got
one.
it in boldface, so I thought it was a new. No, it's part of
Part of the same
original
thing.
one.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. They're going to be even though they're putting in all this power, they're renewable power. They're going to be increasing their carbon emissions for a few years.
Yeah, this is a long article.
It's a long article. It's in The Ecologist. You can go to the blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com.
Well, there's a lot of meat in this, so it's worth following up on that.
Yeah, but let's go ahead to the next one.
U.S. government has invested $34 billion in renewable energy.
Yeah, and it's making a profit.
This goes on with what we just talked about
exactly.
10 minutes ago.
The United States government is a savvier investor in green technology than Silicon Valley's masters of the universe? Question mark. Wow, it sure looks like it. The report shows that the DOE has far fewer failures than a typical venture capital firm and is earning money for taxpayers. This is from Take Part. And what they're talking about is, the Solyndra failed, Fisker failed, and so what? I mean, we're getting better than 97% of these organizations are paying off their debts with interest, and we're going to be profiting from that. So
it's money back into the pot.
It's money back into the pot, exactly.
You make bullets, you never see the money again. You invest in these things, you see a return.
Yeah. I am not, by the way, anti-military. Mm-hmm. I'm not even anti-war if the war makes sense. But by golly, there's a lot of them that don't make any sense at all.
I'm agreeing with you.
Man.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. I mean,
I have a graph up here that goes along with this, but it's too big to get on one page. So maybe I'm just going to scroll down slowly.
Let's see what it says.
You can read the...
Well, okay, loan guarantees and conditional commitments used, 32.25 billion. Amount dispersed, 21.71. Principal repaid, 3.49 billion.
That's to date.
That's to date.
Interest earned. That's to date.
810 million, which is more than
Solyndra.
Actually, it's more than Solyndra and Fisker combined.
Yep.
So, yep, actual and estimated losses, 780 million. Well, that's
So
Fisker.
They've almost earned more in interest
than they have lost. And they have no reason to believe that anything they've loaned is in trouble. Losses as a total
of total commitments.
2.28%.
Less than 3%. Now, you're not going to get that kind of return on your investment in Wall Street.
You're not, certainly not as a venture capitalist.
Yeah.
Now, there's a difference we should point out between the United States government and a venture capitalist, and that is that the venture capitalist owns the company. In this case, the United States government is leaving these companies as free organizations, and not
just lending the money.
Right. And if you're going to be a true free market capitalist, then you should probably appreciate the fact that the government is not taking possession here. It's loaning money to get free market organizations going. But of course, if you are one of the people who's spending money on the free market, you probably don't appreciate that, because you have a vested interest in making sure that you can fool everybody into thinking that the market that you control is actually free. Everybody confused? Okay. Should we go on?
I think we should go on.
Okay. From Clean Technica, as critics of the Energiewende like to point out, in 2013, Germany's emissions rose to 952 million tons. That's metric tons, by the way. Nevertheless, while this is an increase, it is actually 23% lower than its figure in 1990, which is the baseline year adopted by nations who signed the Kyoto Accord. By comparison, the world emissions are now 61% higher than 1990 levels.
And Germany is 23% lower.
Yes. They've had a slight increase each year since they closed down nearly half of their nuclear power plants.
So what this is basically saying is examine what you're reading.
Yes.
Because it isn't always what they want you to think it is.
That's exactly correct. The media can take the media can tell you a series of things, all of which are actually true, and lead you to believe something which is not even close to the truth.
I've got some graphs here. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. They're kind of busy.
Yeah.
But they show you, the one on the right shows you how greenhouse gases in the U.S. has been going down.
In the last few years, last 3 or 4 years.
And on the left is Germany,
which has been going down for quite a while, but it's gone up in the last couple of years. And as we said, because they closed those nuclear power plants. Now, by the way, their greenhouse gas emissions are going down again.
Interestingly enough, Canada's going up, at least on a per capita basis.
Yes.
And it's because of the oil sands.
Yes.
And got another graph here over there on the right, which shows the per capita with a number of major companies: France, China, Italy, UK. Canada and the US are way down in the bottom of the list.
In terms
That's per capita emissions.
Yes.
Tons of greenhouse gases per capita. And
Yeah.
we're down on the bottom of the list because we got the highest number.
The bottom of the list is the
highest greenhouse gas per person.
Per person,
capita.
yeah. And a lot of that is because Americans and Canadians use energy very inefficiently.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, should we go on? We're still on Tuesday. SunEdison can continue to grow its growth even without support of tax credits in the United States. The company said on Monday, this is really interesting that they would do this, because they're talking about, do we want to end these tax credits? They're making money on them. As it agreed to a $2.4 billion deal for privately owned First Wind that will make it the world's largest developer of wind and solar power. First Wind has wind farms in several states, including Maine, New York, and Vermont.
Yep.
Now, these people have actually stated publicly that, just as the Republican Congress is going to be saying, well, we don't need to give these people money. They're stating publicly, well, we don't need your money.
We can do it without it.
And you'd think that they'd be fighting for that money, but they apparently are not.
Well, they're making money with what they're doing already.
Right.
The prices of these things are coming down so rapidly that subsidies aren't any longer necessary.
Right.
Or at least they won't be as necessary as they were. And like whenever you're trying to start an infant industry of some sort or another, you subsidize it. That's what governments do. States do. States compete against each other.
Yep.
For a new plant, look at the Volkswagen factory, whether they put it into North Carolina. There was about 6 states fighting over that.
Yes. Well, the $5 billion battery factory.
The battery plant, yeah, and that's going up. Oh, that's buried by snow now.
I'll bet it is.
It's up in Buffalo. Ooh.
Buffalo? No, weren't they in Nevada? They have a different one in Buffalo.
They're opening up in Buffalo, New York. I think they're going to make batteries up.
We have got less than 14 minutes to go through 7 items.
We can do it.
We can do it. Okay, CNN gave us this. The Senate blocked a measure Tuesday that would have authorized construction of the Keystone XL pipeline as Democrats chose their pro-environment base over an old friend and battled Louisiana Senator Mary Landrieu. Republicans will be ready to try again with much better odds of success once they take control of the Senate in January.
Well, that's still got to go past the president's veto.
It's got to.
As of now, Obama's saying he's going to veto it, or he's likely to.
He's likely to.
He's got other things he's got to consider, which they mention here.
Cagey here.
Well, because it's crossing international boundaries, the State Department's got to get involved.
Right.
And they're conducting an investigation right now on exactly that.
Yep. There's another one, too, which I don't know if you're aware of, but the Indians who have reservations that this thing is crossing.
In Canada.
In the United States, are saying they have sovereign rights over their territories. This is an act of war.
I hadn't heard that one.
And they are intending to prevent anybody from getting onto their reservations to put that pipeline in.
That could get interesting.
It could get interesting. Okay, next, Clean Technica, how to profit from solar and storage. When there is a sudden surge in demand, the electric grid needs to deploy additional power immediately and ramp up and down to provide a stable supply of power. Batteries are able to provide an instantaneous response.
We were just talking about that.
Right, which is known as frequency regulation. I don't know that
Let me explain that, because as the voltage increases or decreases according to what's feeding into and pulling off the grid,
right,
it doesn't affect the actual voltage that much. It can't. But what is changing is the frequency. Now, the frequency regulation has to be good because so many things depend upon exact 60 cycle frequency, like everybody's home clocks.
Right.
I don't think that matters. But important clocks in important industries and important research have to be accurate to the fraction of a second.
Right.
And that's basically what these guys are doing.
Well, actually, those clocks, a lot of them are
atomic clocks.
They're atomic clocks that are running on DC power.
Yeah.
Like the clocks in computers. But even so,
it's important that 60 cycles is 60 cycles.
Yeah.
It's very important that it is, and that's what they're really trying to regulate.
Yep.
If it was 122 volts instead of 120 volts, I don't think anybody'd bother.
Probably not. Okay, we have to get on. The Ecologist says this: reclaim the power. Democratic energy must replace corporate capture. Democratizing energy would not only save thousands of lives a year, but it would be a big step forward in saving the planet. Could Egg in Scotland, an island owned collectively by its inhabitants and supplied by renewable capacity, be a model for transformation of energy? We could spend an hour on this.
There's a picture of Egg up there. Or a very interesting looking rock called Unskurr. which translates as the Notch.
The Notch, okay.
And it's a very interesting looking mountain. I read about it. You can climb it. You can climb it in 2 hours.
Really?
Yeah. Make a round trip in 4.
Yeah. Okay, we should be pressing on fast, and we should actually talk about that in a separate show. All right, next, from Cambridge Times, the massive task of refurbishing 10 nuclear reactors at a cost of $25 billion is the crucial issue for keeping electric rates under control in Ontario, says a Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce investment banker. He illustrated by running through a list of projects that have missed deadlines and gone hugely over budget. This is $25 billion, and admittedly, since this is coming from Cambridge, which is in Ontario, I would assume those are not U.S. dollars, they're Canadian dollars. But nevertheless, $2.5 billion to refurbish each of 10 reactors is a lot.
I was finding it because it was right in front of me.
Aha, there you go.
Massive task of refurbishing 10 nuclear reactors at a cost of $25 billion. Wow.
Amazing. Okay.
Well, these plants been built a long time ago.
Yep.
They've been built for 60 years, but that 60 years includes a certain amount of refurbishment.
Right.
They're at that point right now where the refurbishing's coming up, and it's expensive.
Yes.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, when they built these plants, they didn't think it was going to be that expensive.
Well, they didn't think they were going to be refurbishing them. The plant had an expected life, and they were going to close it. After 40 years, it was going to be closed.
They're trying to get 60 out of it. Yeah.
So I'm going to go on, if you don't mind.
Okay.
We've got a couple of good things coming up. Today, November 20th, we got this from The Guardian. The future of Hinkley Point C nuclear plant in the UK is under a cloud amidst a financial crisis at Areva, a shareholder in the project and designer of the proposed reactors. Power plants in both Finland and France are massively over budget and behind schedule, forcing Areva to consider whether it needs an injection of new cash to survive.
You got to hit more. I wasn't able to download this.
Yeah, but you know, I read that and I'm sitting there and thinking, they got in order to get that plant built, in order to get the money, they had to get a promise that the plant would be able to deliver power and have it purchased at double
a very high price.
Right, double the going rate. And
now they're saying they can't do it.
And at that rate, they were still unable to get investors in the UK or France. So they went to the rest of Europe, and they were still unable to get investors, so they got Chinese investors into this. If you were a Chinese investor and Areva said, well, we're not sure what we're going to do here, we might need more money, what would you do?
I'd probably bail out.
They might bail out. This is in trouble. Okay, if you don't mind, you don't have anything on that, we should go on to the next one. This from Clean Technica. There's been a lot of controversy about the Ivanpah concentrating solar power plant.
We've talked about that a lot.
Charges range from the idea that it is killing thousands of birds, we've talked about that on this show, to the idea that it's producing only a fraction of its power. We reported that last show, as I recall. It was only a fraction of the power. It was designed to make. One thing to remember is that you should not believe everything you read in the media. And it turns out that the information that we're getting here is coming from where? Fox News.
Oh, well, fair and balanced, right?
Oh, man.
By the way, if anybody's not familiar with this Ivanpah solar plant, it's not solar cells like we see up here on Western Avenue.
Right.
There's a picture up there. There's this huge tower, and it's bright at the top.
That's
because instead of solar cells down there, there's 1,000 mirrors.
And that
and
top,
all focusing on that top.
And that's
why that's so bright.
That thing is hotter than the depot stove.
Oh yeah. I think it's so hot that the fluid that they're using isn't water; it's sodium.
It's not sodium. It's a sodium salt.
A sodium salt. Okay.
Right. So it's a sort of thing that would normally at room temperature be a solid.
Be quite solid.
And you mentioned, I think, when we were talking, it might have been before the show, that they have to start this thing with natural gas in order to get the sodium melted so they can have it flow.
so that damn thing works. They got kind of preheated, and they're using natural gas to preheat it.
They've been accused of killing thousands of birds. I think tens of thousands of birds.
It's not happening.
It's not happening, apparently. And the company that is running this said, yeah, we had about 160 birds that got burned, and we had or maybe it was less than 160, and we had a couple hundred others. They have killed about 300 and some odd birds, but less than 400 birds, but they say that most of the 2/3 of those were not killed by the concentrated sunlight. They were killed by other things. And
they were flying into the tower or something like that?
Whatever, I don't know. I mean, birds fly into cooling towers for nuclear reactors and coal burning plants every day. Yeah, that's right. And the other thing is that, you know, somebody was pointing out that they were only getting 38% or something of the power that they said they were going to get. And the people running the plant said, wait a minute, this is a new technology. We're just starting it up. We're not going to throw a switch and have it go at 100% on the first day, or the first month, or even the first half of the first year.
So they're ramping this up slowly, learning as they go.
Exactly.
And eventually they will hit, or hope to hit.
Right. And it's like a child saying to his father, you're not going 65 miles an hour when the red light has just turned green and they're halfway across the intersection. You know, well, that's bad reporting. And we can point the finger for bad reporting if we want to. And in my opinion, it's going to people who are supported by the nuclear and much more so by the fossil fuel industries.
Well, I think if you traced it back far enough, you wouldn't have to go very far to find out who it is.
We have one more item. Do you want to stay on that for a minute, or no? I see that you've got this next one coming up.
Yeah.
Let's do it. AES, and I don't know what AES stands for, but I'm just going to report it as AES.
I did know.
Okay, I'm sure
it's a company. It's a company's name.
Is building a 100 megawatt, 400 megawatt hour lithium-ion battery for Southern California Edison as an alternative to gas peaker plants. The president of AES Energy Storage called it, quote, the new state of the art, end quote. He added, quote, this contract marks the emergence of energy storage as a cost-effective alternative for peaking power plants for local power capacity and reliability.
And there's a picture of it up there. It looks like a great big battery. It's in downtown LA.
But it's not there yet.
I mean, it's only a joke, but look at that round building. It looks like a big battery.
Yeah.
I think that's somebody.
This is going to be a big battery.
It's not going to be in downtown LA.
Yes.
And it's not going to be round and look like a battery. It's going to be square, and it's going to be at a generating station.
But even so, 100 megawatts, 400 megawatt hours?
That's a lot.
This is a lot. And, you know, this means that, well...
There was something
It would be interesting to know how much that cost.
This was the result of a request for quotations that wasn't necessarily limited to batteries. It was all sorts of storage alternatives, but the battery proposal won.
Now that's interesting because it means that it beat natural gas peaking plants.
Winning bids include a diverse array of grid-scale storage, behind-the-meter storage, distributed generation photovoltaic, thermal storage, demand response, energy efficiency, and natural gas peaker plants. All of these things were competing.
Yeah.
And the best proposal was for the battery.
Now, 100 megawatts, well, we should point out to people, because a lot of people don't know this, natural gas plants, the kind of standard run-of-the-mill thermal, what do they call it, combined cycle plant, produces power cheaply.
Yeah, it does.
Natural gas peaker plants don't produce power cheaply.
No.
And so we're not talking about that kind of competition. However, we have come to the end of our hour, Tom. So I think we should say goodbye to everybody.
We're 40 seconds away, huh?
Yeah, we are.
I guess we are.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, just under the wire.
Just under the wire. Okay, that was a truly monumental effort. I am George Harvey. I will say goodbye.
And I am Tom Fennell. How come
enjoy your week?
I raised my right hand and I see my left hand on the screen?
It's because it's not a mirror, it's a screen.
That always fools me.
It does, doesn't it? I keep turning my head thinking that I'm going to see, the other side of it, and it just, I don't know. Everybody should come in, try making a TV show. Bye-bye.
It's fun.
We spin and we toil, we work all day, sowing and reaping, we store goods away, so we can be dressed.